Welcome back to Beholder to No One, a D&D podcast. Greg and I are here today to talk about being a dungeon master and then just generic questions about DMing.
That we are, and I know specifically you, like you have way more experience when it comes to DMing than I do. I took a huge break on D&D in high school. I think I played 3.5 in high school, and then stopped until basically I moved in with my now wife Ashley and you guys.
Yep, I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons since 2003. I started DMing with 5th edition, and that was probably 5 years ago. So I still don't have as much experience as a lot of people do, but for our friend group, I think I have, like our close friend group, I think I have the most experience.
I believe that to be true, yeah. For sure.
I do have friends outside of our closer friend group that have been DMing for 10 plus years, some even 20 years, who have oodles of experience more than me, and I always go to them.
Yeah, as far as like my close friend group, I think the only other person that really ever DMs aside from myself, which I'm again very new to it. The first DM game I did was the Curse of Strahd campaign that we ran a couple years ago, I think.
Yeah,
and then I've run, I think three games, but we haven't ever finished one. But I think I've run 3 games since then, and I'm going to be running a Curse of Strahd coming up soon. But I think the only other person really, besides obviously you and Keith and Ashley, Ryan apparently has we've never played a game with him, but he's the one who's going to be DMing our upcoming game for the podcast, actually.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Was I not supposed to say anything? That was totally my bad.
That was this big secret, so super secret, guys. But no, that's fine. We are in the process of creating a actual play game for the podcast. Don't have details yet, but as soon as we do, we will tell you more information.
Got to drop the ball on that one. I apologize.
Nah, it's all good. They're going to find out eventually.
I guess that's fair. But yeah, apparently he's been DMing for quite some time, at least 5, 6, maybe 7 years, he told me. And he plays weekly and has a bunch of games that he runs, and he's really excited to get into this new one, and as am I.
Yes, I'm very excited about it as well. So the questions that I have, I asked on Twitter, I asked on Facebook, and I asked on Discord in one of my servers that I admin for, just some general questions for DMs and what things you've been asked as a DM in the past. So we have a handful of generic questions here, and I think some of them are really good. The first one comes from Tales of Aspirin, which is a real play podcast or actual play podcast. They said one thing people have asked a lot is, what are some things you had to completely make up on the spot? And how do you improv on the fly?
It's a good one. It's a very good one. I mean, even in my short time being a DM, like I've had to make up so many things just right there on the spot. And I mean, I that's one of my more favorite things about DMing is being able to like basically test yourself on just how much you can just like spit random crap out at your players and just, make it cohesive.
Yeah, I remember when I first started DMing, I was bad at this. And I'm still not amazing at it, but I was terrible. I picked up the DM torch because our DM stepped down for a little bit. He needed to take a break. And I was like, well, I'll give it a try. I don't want us to stop playing. And the first couple of times, I literally would say, I don't know, the book doesn't say. Like, they're like, oh, I roll a persuasion check to convince them to do. I'm like, but the book doesn't say you can do that, so you can't do it.
Yeah, you can't really. I mean, being a completely new DM, like you have to have some kind of a guideline, and the DM's guide is exactly that. So trying to stray away from that right off the bat is kind of difficult.
Right, and one of my friends was just like, just make it up. He just like looked at me like, make it up. And I'm like, but the book doesn't say.
And you're just like, wait, you could do that?
Like, I knew you could because I've seen it, but it's just like, it was so new to me. Like, well, how do I know what to make the DC? I don't know what to compare it to. Like, I was just like confused and like, how do I even start? I think this is actually fairly common. So making up things on the spot is It's a very useful skill, and I will say you will improve upon it with practice.
Absolutely.
This is necessary though, because if it can go wrong, the party will find the way to make it go wrong. And if there is a way that you think they're gonna go, they're gonna find another way. Like it's inevitable. That's how it works every time.
That, and you can't make the adventure that you're playing too rigid or streamlined, because you're trying to make a world that your players can run around in and do whatever they want. If you what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? Like railroad them to doing what you want to do. I mean, if the players are okay with something like that, like, you know, at session 0, be like, hey, this is how it's going to work, and they're okay with that, then by all means. But if you're playing in a game where people kind of want more freedom to do what they would like to do, let them do that as well.
Yes, railroading is a very good way to start, and a lot of campaigns or not campaigns, but a lot of like individual quest lines that you find on like DM's Guild and stuff like that. Those are very much straight and to the point. This is from point A to point B, and they're built in a way that you can't easily stray off the path. You might go into a different room first, but that's the extent of I'm changing course. Where more open world campaigns, they're a little bit more challenging, but it offers the freedom of the player to do with what they please. But that could lead to them possibly dying because they go down a path that they're not supposed to.
And it usually does.
Yeah, that was something I think happened when Ashley was DMing Princes of the Apocalypse. We only played it for a little bit, but there was a route we were going to go, and she ended up having an NPC like step in and say, "You're going the wrong way. If you go this way, you're going to die," and like something like that.
Oh man.
Because if we went that way, we were gonna go fight like a CR 20 something. And they're like,
Right.
No, don't go that way.
I completely forgot that she even DM'd that at the beginning. That was when I was playing my Goblin Barbarian.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was toward the beginning of the campaign, we had like this split in a road where it's like, oh, over here is this weird castle-looking thing, and then the other side was something else. And everybody was like, oh, why don't we go check out this castle? And there were like stories of an ancient dragon or something to that extent. And basically, had we gone that way, we would have ran into said dragon and probably died immediately.
Exactly. And it almost happened in your Curse of Strahd game too. As soon as our paladin learned of Strahd and his wicked deeds, he immediately was like, let's go face Strahd. And we're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Hold up. You know the book's based off of that, right?
That, I mean, you're more than free to go there if you'd like. You just won't get very far, and I can guarantee it.
Like, maybe we don't go face the guy who controls this entire land.
We're only level 3, guys. Like,
We couldn't even survive that last house. Like, I died twice. This is my third character. Come on.
oh god, that's right. You did lose 2 characters in that. I forgot.
I was like, come on, give me a shot. I need to survive. I can't go face Strahd yet.
Oh man, I don't know. I guess it's pretty infamous for being just a very, very difficult starter quest for Curse of Strahd. But man, I had no idea it was that crazy.
Yes. But to that point, you have to just learn and experience it and have a couple of things up your sleeve when it comes to making things up on the spot. If you have them going to a town that you've invented or a world that you invented, have some generic character ideas in your mind. Have some naming conventions, maybe just the general store owner and his name and like a generic personality. You don't need to have them be super in depth or anything, but having a little bit of planning does help go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
And then personally, I found if somebody goes off completely on a different tangent, I found having a table of like generic monster fights has helped me dramatically. Just having pre-planned, okay, you guys are level 5. Here are 20 possible things that could happen if you decide to go off into the wilds. And here's 20 random fights that are already established for your level. And that way I can just roll a d20 and determine what happens. And that helps too, just being a little bit more prepared at first.
Yeah, that's a super good idea. Since we're talking about this specifically, how much planning? I guess this is my question for the podcast. Hooray! How much planning do you usually do before a session?
It depends on the game. So I DM currently once a week. I was DMing twice a week, but now it's once a week. And there have been weeks where I have planned a shit ton. I created an entire city. I created the people in the city and the different NPCs and the buildings and everything in there from point A to point B. And then the party just left and went on a ship. And from there, I had to just figure it out. There have been weeks where I don't plan at all. Right now, I haven't been preparing whatsoever because they are just on a ship and they're traveling and they'll be traveling for about a month. So I'm like, okay, let me just look up some monster fights, and that's the extent of my planning.
Okay.
If there is something that I know I want to include, and especially if I want to start getting character backgrounds involved, I do need to plan a little bit more.
Of course.
A perfect example, Bree, who is my Friday night DM, she plans a lot. And she's literally told us, like, she has a binder for each character in that party and takes notes whenever we say anything that helps with our character backgrounds or helps to evolve our characters' personalities and personas. And she had things in there that I forgot I even said in character. I honestly and truly, this happened yesterday. I forgot my character had a brother.
Oh, wow.
Because I completely forgot I told her that. And it was just like random spitballing at one point. And I literally said in game, oh, I wouldn't know, I don't have any siblings. And then later we run into somebody, she's like, oh, how's your brother? And I'm like, out of character, I have a brother? Like, she's like, yeah, you told me you have a brother named blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, huh, okay. In character, let's pretend I said that earlier, that I had a brother.
Nice.
Because I forgot. But yeah, it takes time and energy to prepare that.
For sure. Yeah, that's way more than I've ever done as far as planning is concerned. Like I don't have a binder for each character, nothing like that. I think the most I've planned is like the first time we all meet, like not session 0, but actually the first play game. That's where I sit down for a couple hours, like maybe a day or two beforehand or throughout the week, and I read up on the lore of the world that we're in and so on and so forth. And then I might have 2 or 3 pages worth of notes for that one session. After that, it kind of goes off the rails. Like I have specific spots that I want the characters to get to at some point, and I know how I would like them to get there. But being it's D&D, so the characters can do whatever they want. And if I feel that they're straying a little too far from where I would like them to go, that's at the point where I would just throw in an NPC like Ashley did and be like, hey, maybe you guys should go over here or something to that extent. But
right.
aside from that, like most of the stuff that happens in the games that I DM is just off the cuff.
I think that, so one of my friends who DMs, the way he plans it is he has some generic situations it's like, this is the next quest. And if you break it up into quests, then it's a little bit easier. So if you're doing a campaign, the campaign kind of does this for you. If you're building your own story, then you have an overarching plot and you need to know in the back of your head, this is what the end boss is or the end situation, and they're doing something in the background while these players are improving themselves and learning about the story and learning about the problems. So you keep that in the back of your head, but then there's going to be other issues that come along with it. In my Friday game, a perfect example is we have an overarching problem that we all know about, and that's still happening, but then we're like, oh, hey, we just heard about some kids have gone missing, and our characters go and find the kids. Or we heard about there were some redcaps who killed the grandson of our beloved cake baker, who we get sweet cakes from in the mornings. And she disappeared, and we're like, where the heck is Mildred? We have to go find Mildred. And we found out that her grandson went missing or was found dead. and they were left like a note or something, but the guards just said that he fell and it was an accident. So we went and found who did it and destroyed him because we're like, how dare you take the Sweet Cake Lady's grandson, you jerks. But so there were like many stories, and we did one story where we involved one of the players' parents who has been missing, who disappeared years ago, and like suddenly her character finds out she's not dead and she didn't know. Or we had a story where the other character's friend went missing and we had to find her and rescue her. In my storyline, we're slowly finding out more about the people who have threatened my character's family and finding out more about her past. And I like that. I like when you know a little bit about your story, but you leave some open-ended questions and unknowns for the DM to play with.
Oh, absolutely.
And that provides you with some surprises too. So you're on the edge of your seat like, oh shit, what do you mean he's still alive? I had no idea. This is absurd. So then you get excited for your character and you get like more into the character too because you don't know everything about them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, writing a full like rigid background on your character is difficult to begin with. I think in our Descent into Avernus campaign, like most of the people, when we had our session 0, most of the people were just like, this is my character, this is their name, and like 2 or 3 little things about them. And then I got there and I was like, all right, this is the character name, and here's a 3-page backstory about where he was born, how he got to where he is today. And I remember sending, I think Keith was the DM for that, so I sent him a picture of it on my phone, and he was like, what the... Why do you have all of this? And I was working. That was when I was doing overnights at the hospital as a security guard, and I had plenty of free time, and that's kind of how I spent that.
Yeah, exactly. It's I think that background is important to know how you got to where you are, but having some questions and in unknowns in your past is helpful. Perfect example with Roya. I never mapped out much about her parents. I never mapped out much about why she became what she is today. There's plenty of opportunities to expound upon that, and Ashley is more than welcome to do so if she pleases. And there's unknowns for the future. Like, she doesn't know that she's pregnant. She doesn't know what that's going to lead to. She doesn't know how her boyfriend's going to react when he finds out he can't have this magic powerful staff. And then ends up being like the ultimate bad guy again instead of her boo or whatever.
Right.
So it's interesting to see how those things work. And I like when the characters don't know everything about each other. And it's one thing, like, I know I could tell Ashley and you certain things, but I know with certain players, like, you can't really tell them anything because then they forget that they don't actually know that.
Right.
And then they start holding it against you or like mentioning it and like, no, wait, you wouldn't know that. You don't know that this is happening.
For more information on that, please go back and listen to our last episode.
Yes.
About metagaming and whatnot.
So the next question, how not to focus on a specific player, and it's targeting one player, like the DM is purposely picking on one person, but also focusing on one player's story. In my personal opinion, try not to let, and I'm bad at this sometimes, try not to let your personal feelings affect how you treat a PC. Same with metagaming. In character knowledge, out of character knowledge, those are 2 different things. That's for targeting.
Of course.
Now, obviously, if there is a reason for the player or the NPC or the monster to target that person, that's different. There are some monsters who will purposely go for the strongest looking one. There are some that are intelligent and will go for the most intelligent looking one first, or the weakest person. And there are some that literally say they will attack the closest being. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, and if there's like, multiple player characters around a specific monster, the easiest way to handle that is usually roll a die at random to see which character they're going to hit, rather than like going down the line or picking one player particularly.
I usually roll dice. I will target if a player does more damage than another.
Oh, you follow the aggro rules?
Kind of. Like, for example, on my Monday game, the Paladin is usually the tank. The Paladin wasn't doing shit. Like, they didn't hit at all yet in the entire fight. They kept missing. The Ranger, though, hit and did a lot of damage. So the monster went towards the Ranger.
Makes sense.
Because why would you attack the thing that's not hurting you?
Yeah.
So it felt like I was targeting, but thankfully he understood, like, Adriana did a shit ton of damage. No wonder you're going after her. But if there were more than one creature and there was no legitimate reason why they would go after one person, I literally rolled a die. I would say, okay, 1 is this person, 2, 3, 4, in going clockwise. And I roll a die. I'm like, sorry, the dice didn't like you, and then I roll.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair way to go about it. It's basically RNG, so you can't really get mad at that.
Exactly.
I mean, people still do, I imagine, but it's
Yes.
more difficult to do so.
Now, for focusing on their story, I think that's something the DM needs to learn, but there are going to be moments where it does focus on one particular character.
Of course.
And you see that in Critical Role.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There are going to be an overarching art or set of episodes that are going to focus on one character, because right now that's whose story is prevalent. If we're talking about Nott's character, for example, I'm trying not to do spoilers, but Nott's character, there's going to be a scene where they're around Nott's family. You're going to focus on Nott. You're not going to go focus on Yasha at that point, because Yasha isn't necessary for this part. So at that moment, Nott will be more mentioned. Their story will be more focused. But a couple episodes later, it'll switch to Ford, or it'll switch to Yasha, or it'll switch to Caduceus. Like, you just have to make sure everybody gets their moment.
Right, exactly. That's actually literally word for word what I was going to say, is based on Critical Role specifically and other D&D podcasts that are out there. Making sure everybody has their moment in the spotlight is very useful and makes your players happy.
Yes. Now, there are players who try to get themselves to be the center of attention a lot.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure both of us have
Yes.
come into contact with some players like that.
In that case, the DM may need to talk to that person if it becomes a problem. I know of one person that we've both played with, but I also have somebody from my games that stepped out of the game, but they were one of those people that would just focus on themselves. If the story wasn't about them, they weren't interested in the story at all. And it got to the point where they would leave the party, splitting the party to go run off and do things. And the rest of us purposely started doing things to avoid us having to go find them, just to kind of be like, okay, you want to do that? We're going to go shopping.
Always split the party.
Like, we were all together. Like, they were a rogue, so they would stealth away without us knowing. We're like, shit, where did he go? Whatever, who wants ice cream? Like,
yeah, or Lathless disappearing all the time, or just sitting in his room while everybody else is out doing stuff.
Right, exactly. And Lathless is kind of a good example too. Like, it was bad a little bit at points where you were playing your character to their true extent, which is they were introverted and they want to walk away. And I had to be like annoying as hell to get him involved in the characters, the other characters. I'm like, Lathless, we're doing this. You want to come? No, you have to come. Let's go.
Yeah, it's basically how almost every time it went like that.
He's like, I'm good. I'm staying in my room. Nope, let's go. We're going. Let's go. You're coming with us.
And then I'll Misty step out my bedroom window.
Yeah, pretty much.
You couldn't find me anyway.
And that's like, in those cases, there were games completely where you did nothing because you hid in your room the entire time. And I'm just like, come on, just come play with us.
But I mean, that's a very good example. You're absolutely right. But that wasn't something that was because I was disinterested in the story or anything. As you mentioned, it was because that was how the character was. Like, he was very introverted, didn't really like going out a whole lot. I was basically playing myself as a D&D character, which is always super fun to do because then you have all this stuff you can base it on and all this other crap. You don't really need a lot of inspiration as far as that's concerned. But at the same time, in those episodes or those games, I keep wanting to say episodes because of Critical Role. In those games where I was just kind of sitting around not doing anything. I wasn't upset about it because I did that.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't like the DM just decided, "Oh, hey, you're not going to do crap this entire game. You might as well not even be at the table."
Mostly Ashley and I were like, come on, Greg, are you sure? Let's go play. Come on, you're
Yeah.
not doing anything.
Yeah. At the same time, again, that was around the time that I was working the security guard job at the hospital. So a lot of times I was very tired when we were playing, or just waking up when we were playing.
That's fair. I feel like if you're going to make a character, like try to have a reason for them to be with the party, whether like you can have an introverted character, you can have a quiet character, a shy character, all of that's perfectly fine and valid. But make sure there's like a little bit of a reason why you actually want to be with the party and participate. There's going to be days, obviously, and in character and out of character that you just don't want to. And that's also fine. But just like, as long as you're usually involving yourself.
Right. Like I remember specifically there was a part in the Waterdeep campaign that we were just about done with, apparently, where, oh, what was it? We took a cart to some other kind of far away place or town or ramshacked town, something like that, and found this guy that we were looking for, dealt with him, and then we all went away to this, oh man, I had it and I'm blanking so hard. Some old lady that had some kind of submarine type thing.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
She gave Roya mushrooms.
Yes. I think everybody did in that game, but yes.
Nope, just Roya and Val.
Just her.
But Val
Okay,
and
fair enough.
Crom went into the submarine and went down into the water. And I think you disappeared on that one.
Yeah, I went to, I think like 2 hours into that game, I just kind of went to bed because I was exhausted. But my character was like, oh, I'm going to sit outside with this person that we can't really like leave alone. So my entire time out there my entire time going to sleep or whatever I was doing at that point was my character sitting outside with this other person while everybody else did their own thing.
Yes. So the next question, how to world build in a way that your players are interested? This is kind of a convoluted question. Like world building is hard in its own.
For sure.
Think the generic is having characters and NPCs that are intriguing and have personalities. Don't just have every shopkeep be a generic shopkeep. Don't have every quest giver be a generic quest giver. Give them some type of persona. And this does take a little bit of pre-planning, but a perfect example is like in Curse of Strahd, one of the first characters you meet in the first town you go to is a bartender, and he has no personality whatsoever. He just cleans glasses, and that's all he does, and that's who he is. But that's one character. Just one. Then you have like these crazy over-the-top characters who are super colorful and super vibrant and super eccentric, and they are super friendly and want to just be on your good side, who are also in the same story. So just have a mix of things. You can have characters who are racist, which, though that would be definitely a double check with your party before you do that in a game, because sometimes we use that for escapism.
Mm-hmm.
You could have people who are sneaky bastards and try to rob the party and trick them into paying more money than what they should. You can have people who are really friendly, and like some people who are way too friendly and just don't know when to stop.
I think in the Curse of Strahd, was it Curse of Strahd? Might have been. Your character kind of got into like a weird relationship with the innkeeper. No, it was Prince of the Apocalypse. Your character got into a weird kind of relationship with the innkeeper that you guys were staying at because you helped her redecorate her kitchen.
Yeah.
I think.
Totally.
Repair her kitchen because it was all busted up and everything. And then so that was one character, and then there was a whole bunch of other random NPCs that were throughout that whole town that not everyone had a different voice per se, because I literally have maybe 4 voices that I can do well, and then 9 times out of 10 I end up dropping the voice halfway through anyway. So yeah, having different characters, different locales. Obviously, not everything's going to be the same like brick road or asphalt road or dirt road, maybe forests, rivers, waterfalls, stuff like that. World building, like you said, is very difficult. I've never attempted to do it myself, mostly because I don't really have the attention span to sit down and do something like that. But yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different little things you can do to make things interesting.
And I think if you want some ideas on different types of characters, play MMO. Go
Yep.
play Elder Scrolls, and Elder Scrolls has thousands of different characters to choose from. Like there's from the crotchety old lady to the mischief god that just screws you over all the time. That's
Oh yes.
like there's so many different personas there. Or you can watch Adventure Zone. Adventure Zone has some pretty funny character differentiations. Even though they're all like, some of them sound exactly the same, but some of them, like, you can tell they're a different person.
Critical Role, obviously, another
Role's
really
a
good one
too. Yeah. So the next question is, how does CR work, and how can I calculate CR? So CR is, oh crap, what does the CR stand for?
Challenge rating.
Challenge rating, thank you. So challenge rating on a monster. So a drow is a 1/4, or a guard is like a 1, I think, or a ancient gold dragon is a CR 24. The challenge rating determines how difficult that is going to be for a party to fight. In the DM's guide, there is a actual table to explain how this all works specifically, or you can use a website that does it for you, like Kobold Fight Club. Technically, the way challenge rating is supposed to work is if you are fighting a CR1, it should take 4 level 1 characters to fight that CR1. That's the very basic explanation.
Just as a quick side note, D&D Beyond also just recently released their Encounter Builder, which kind of falls in the same vein as Kobold Fight Club.
Perfect. Each level, you have a certain number of experience points that would consider a encounter, and they base it off easy, medium, hard, or deadly. So you take the number of players you have and their levels, and you add up those numbers based off that table to determine how much of an encounter could be with experience points to determine what you're going to throw at them. Now, there is something called adjusted experience, where, again, this is a table in the DM's book that multiplies it if there's more than one monster. So the example I think I was saying earlier, if you have 2 level 5s and 2 level 6s, you can throw 20 drow at them, which is they're each a CR 4th, and that's about 1,000 experience. But in a difficulty wise, it's 4 times harder. So it's 4,000 experience adjusted to determine their difficulty. So 1,000 experience is barely an easy encounter, but 4,000 is considered a hard encounter. And that's kind of how you balance it. Medium encounters are normally like, you don't really expect anything to happen. It should be pretty simple to take on, though with luck, bad luck or good luck, it could go south. A hard encounter, it's more challenging. There is a potential that somebody may get injured, but they probably won't die. And then deadly encounter, more than likely one person will get knocked unconscious, or there's a very high likelihood of that happening. So you can use that to just balance, and it's just kind of playing it by ear. One thing I will say is challenge rating does not take into consideration your party. So if you don't have any magic users and you put the people up against things that can only get hurt by magic, it doesn't matter how difficult the encounter says, that's going to be a harder encounter than what it says.
Makes a lot of sense. I'm really glad that you're explaining this whole thing, because you actually had to explain a bit of this to me right before we started recording, and I'm still not 100% sure I understand it. And
honestly, it's trial and error, and a lot of it is just learning as you go and asking somebody who's done it to help you, like, walk you through building an encounter for your specific party, and that's the best way to learn it, I found.
Absolutely. Learn by doing.
Yes. So the next question is, what's the best way to understand the table's expectations and work their own wants into your game? Session 0?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I was about to say, which I believe you've already had an episode on, correct?
We did. But
okay, so in that case, go back and listen to that.
Feel free to explain a little bit if you want.
Oh, sure. So Session 0 is very very helpful. Every game that I've DM'd so far, I've had a session 0. It's basically just a way like everybody gets together before the actual game starts and explains a little bit about their character, very basic features and skills and whatnot. Then you basically just sit around, you explain that to everybody, and then everybody picks another character, I think twice, that hasn't already been picked by another person and explains how they know each other. So that way you have a cohesive story on how your party got together, and it's not just, oh, we were all at a bar and ran into each other type thing.
Yes, and we mentioned this before, I think in the last episode. Having something to tie your characters together makes the game go smoother. That way you're not just constantly fighting each other. And session 0's help with understanding why you are with each other as a group. So you are cohesive and going on the same path.
Absolutely. And that's a very good way to kind of work on your improv skills as well, because somebody can be like, oh, our characters did this, and then you have the ability to expound on that, and it just goes back and forth until both of you are in agreement on how your characters know each other.
Yes. Also, that is session 0 is the time for the DM to lay their own expectations as well. And,
of course.
And their own rules and their own things that they are going to say. And this is where certain things aren't necessarily prevalent for all games. But if you're going to track things like rations and arrows, which a lot of DMs ignore, that's when you would mention it. If you're going to not allow deaths or resurrections, that's when you would mention it. So things that are different from the normal 5th edition gameplay rules, or any edition, depending on what game you're playing, that's when you would mention those things so that everybody is on the exact same page and they understand what to expect going forward.
Absolutely. A prime example of that would be either drinking a potion, action or bonus action, or the way that Critical Role does it when they are able to cast a spell as an action and then also as a bonus action. It's house rules, obviously, but as long as you bring that up ahead of time with everybody and everybody's okay with it, then you can move on that way.
Exactly. And that's also when you would learn, are you looking for a more serious campaign? Are you looking for a more jokey campaign? Are you looking for a deadly survival campaign? This is when you would discover that, and you learn the no-nos and the avoidances that people require in order to keep this as fun for everybody.
Yep. I think you actually had me change something about one of my characters that you didn't really like very much, and it turns out I don't think most of the people in the party didn't like. But yeah, so I mean, it happens. Like we were saying, just make sure that you set that up immediately, and make sure everybody's okay with whatever it is that the rules imply.
Yes, and be willing to compromise so that everybody is having fun.
Right, of course. That's what D&D is all about, is fun.
Yes. So the next question is, well, the next one we already kind of covered. So how to deal with power gamers, or how not to power game. This kind of fell in our thing last week.
Is this equivalent to min-maxing, out of curiosity?
Min-maxing overpowered characters, yes.
Okay. I don't think I've ever heard the term power gamer, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, power gamer is someone who wants to be the most powerful thing ever, and to the point of it's breaking the game. They will take things, they won't go straight one level, they'll multi-class, they'll take magic items specifically to make them more powerful, to make it so that they cannot do wrong with the one or two things that they do great at. Now, this kind of falls under min-maxing and the overpowered that we talked about last week, or it's basically the same thing. Mm-hmm. So how not to power game, we covered that. How to deal with it, that's hard. If you are in a game that's fine and everybody is doing it, then it's not an issue. If you are in a game where only one player is doing it, the DM may need to talk to them ahead of time once they built their character and they learn, like, hey, this is this is really OP, this is broken. They might need to talk to them, like, say, this isn't okay, these things aren't okay, you're making it so that you're too powerful, you're making it so these encounters are becoming deadlier for the rest of the party, and hopefully they will be mature enough to accept that and be willing to work with you. If they're not, they might need to leave the game.
Yeah, it's hard to have a player like that because it can, ruin the fun of every other player that's there. And you would much rather have that person taken out of the game rather than your other players leaving because of that person.
Yes, if it's one person, that's a problem. And everybody else, including yourself, is no longer having fun. Talking it out is the best way to do it. Hopefully they will take it well. But based off personal experience, it doesn't always go great.
Yeah. That's all I'll say on that for now.
So the next one is how to deal with players who absolutely refuse to try and improve their character, forcing you to either kill their character or neuter your encounters. So this one's rough. Because this isn't necessarily, like, this is the opposite I feel about power gaming. It's like if they're underpowered and they're not improving. But I wonder if they meant improving their characters, like, personality-wise and role-playing-wise, or, like, improving their characters mechanic-wise.
I read it as personality-wise because there's not really much of a way to not improve your character, like, stat-wise, unless you're legitimately playing like a wizard and you're like, oh, I'm gonna raise my strength. I'm gonna be the strongest wizard. Because you're still technically improving your character, but not for something that may technically be useful to that character. So I read it as personality wise or just like interplay wise.
True. I think you can again talk to them. You can try to encourage growth. You could put them in situations where they have to make a choice, and if they keep doing what they're doing, the risk of them failing is higher. And this kind of could play, if you're doing personality wise, this could play in the person who runs in Leroy Jenkins. This is the person who doesn't think first, they just act, and then you could provide consequences for their actions. I don't think killing their character outright without them doing something to cause the death is the right answer, but if they do something to cause the death, then that's what it is. If they're just too weak mechanic-wise, I don't think you should force them to create a new character. I think you should just look at the character perhaps if they're a newer player and see what could be tweaked potentially to improve their character with, like, maybe they put their stats in the wrong thing. Maybe they didn't understand they had certain abilities, and you can help them learn how to play their character the correct way.
Quote unquote, correct way.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I do, absolutely. Everybody loves a good brainstorming session. So just pulling that person aside if they're having that much of an issue with it and just being like, hey, so this is what we have currently for your character. Can you think of anything that you would like to do with this character? And then try to go back and forth about what they would like to do with it and just other ways that they can improve their experience while also not interrupting other people's experience. You know what I mean?
Right. Like, I had a friend who made a ranger, and then they had negatives in, like, dex. And I talked to them a little bit, and, like, this was when they first made their character, and I talked to them a little bit, and I'm like, hey, just so you know, rangers usually use dex-based attacks. Not always. And if there's a reason for it, then by all means. But you're putting yourself at a disadvantage if you have a negative in your dexterity versus another stat. And I talked to them about it. Or there was another example where they had a really high charisma for their paladin, but their strength was really low. And while charisma is important for paladins, so is strength. And if they were going to be a tanky melee character and they weren't really talking as much, I discussed that with them. I was like, hey, if you want to be able to attack better, you could do this. Like, here are some things that you might be able to tweak. And that's kind of something that you learn as you go. Like, you don't dump stat con if you want to be a tank or a wizard. Like, that seems like a terrible idea. That's not power gaming. That's just knowing what stats are necessary for your character to succeed.
Absolutely. And in my personal opinion, con should never be a dump stat.
No, it should not for anybody.
That's what intelligence and wisdom is for, or strength and dexterity, depending on what class you're playing. Con always be high.
Even dex, like, honestly, con and dex honestly, those are, I think, your two most important stats. Dex can be at 0, but negatives, you're lowering your AC, your initiative, you're lowering
Yeah, that's fair.
a lot of things that are important and making yourself more squishy.
That's very fair.
At least with strength, it's like, I can't pick you up, sorry. Like, it sucks sometimes, but for the most part, it's fine.
Yeah, I never even put that together, that those were like the two biggest stats, because like you said, strength, I mean, it most games don't really worry with carrying capacity, so that part of it kind of goes out the window. I mean, intelligence and wisdom, I don't, aside from the obvious things that they do, I don't even know what else they adjust stat wise. So yeah, Dex and Con sounds like the two for me as well.
For 5th edition, at least, for intelligence for Pathfinder, that in 3.5, those were important because that determined your skills. But with 5th edition, it doesn't really determine anything. Charisma is an easy dump stat unless you need charisma for your spells,
Yeah.
obviously, or you want to be a talker. In intelligence, like, you don't really need to be a dump stat if you are an intelligent-based magic user or you want to be smart. And like, it's flavor wise, but if you have to have a dump stat, wisdom, charisma, intelligence, strength, those are like usually the go-tos. It just depends on how perceptive or smart or talkative you really want to be.
Very true.
So this next one is from your Facebook.
Yeah, my good friend Mike Dimko. How much do you try and incorporate character backstories when it comes to a fairly straightforward book campaign? And can you explain your favorite way to work with character backstories? Now, we've already sort of covered this a little bit in this episode, but going back, like, I mean, I when I'm DMing a game, I love getting a backstory from a player and then just being able to slowly, like, piece by piece, incorporate it into the story that we're currently, working with. It makes me extremely happy, and it's always a good reaction from the player when they're like, "Oh my god!" Like you were saying with the brother, like your character had a brother and forgot, or you forgot, but your character obviously knew that.
I remembered I had a brother. What are you talking about?
Right. So, I mean, my favorite way to work with character backstories, I don't really have a favorite way, at least not that I've come across as of yet. Obviously, bringing back people from their past is always fun. Whether they made up the character for you or you just incorporated it somehow, that works perfectly fine. That's, I mean, like I said, I'm still fairly new to DMing, so I don't really have a ton of experience with doing it, but that's probably my favorite.
Yeah, for me, it's finding commonalities in the book. And what was the game with Curse of Strahd that Chris Perkins ran?
That was Dice Camera Action.
That's what it was. Okay. So in Dice Camera Action, that's one thing that I liked that they did with Curse of Strahd. So that's a book. That's a campaign book. They're following a pre-made game
that Chris Perkins wrote.
Yes, but they added things in there with the characters to pull them into the story. So there were things that aren't in the book about Strix, for example, but then there's like little bits of things about her being brought into this world that exists in this other domain that she shouldn't be from. And that's obviously not in the book. So find a way to incorporate them, whether from their past or to get them close to somebody for the future. And that would be a good way to get their backstories in. And it could be as small as just coincidental, or it could be they just so happen to worship the same god, or and I think that's how they got the paladin to become involved, was they realized that the gods were the same, they were just a different name, but it was the same god. And like, that's how you tie in somebody who follows somebody. It could be as small as a prophecy is brought up where something from their past is like, wait, that could be me. Like, what? Or you can add a journal where they find that has their parents' initials in it, which is what happened to one of my friends. Like, there's
nice. That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, there's small things that you can add to incorporate it and expand upon the campaign. The campaign is a guideline. It provides you the details that you need to have the fights and the generic world view of it. But what happens with all of that, that's up to you as the DM.
Yeah, I mean, like you just said, the book is a guideline, and you're able to adjust and tweak as needed, which is one of the better things about D&D as a whole, in my opinion.
Yeah, my favorite way to work with character backstories is very subtly. Mention it enough that they pick up on it, but don't give them enough to explain why it's there.
Interesting.
Because that's like, for example, the book. Why is the book there? You find out that the mother was there in this example. The mom was there. This was her journal. She is there. And you find out that the mother's still alive when you thought she was missing or dead, but you don't know why. You don't know what she was doing. You don't know what has happened for the last 4 years that she's been gone. All you know is she's still alive. And it might be 2 more months before we get into that further.
Very nice. That's very good. I'm gonna try to do something like that for our next campaign. That sounds like it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's books do it a lot. It's just like mini cliffhangers, basically. Like you give them enough, you're like, oh crap, who done it? You almost know. You think you know, but then something else happens. You're like, shit, that changes everything. Now it could be 3 different people. So the last couple of questions come from my husband, Keith. His biggest one is how to stop downtime, which is like looking at the rules and making decisions. And this kind of fell into our rules lawyer thing. So he wants to know how to minimize that. And the biggest thing I think with this is having somebody else at the table helping a little bit by them looking it up for you while you continue doing what you're doing. Obviously, there are situations where that's not possible. So at that point, it becomes the DM needs to make a choice based off the knowledge they do have and move forward instead of holding up the game for 5 more minutes. And then while we're continuing, somebody else is looking for the actual answer.
Right. Yeah, of course.
That's the biggest suggestion I have. Between Greg and I, we would probably stop a game constantly and just help the rules make sure we're doing it right. But that's not fun for everybody else.
Absolutely not. Everybody likes knowing what they're doing, but nobody really likes waiting for another person to figure out what's going on.
And that kind of ties in with the when is a map needed type aspect too. I personally love having a map. And that's because you can use your time when it's not your turn to decide what you're going to do on your turn.
Mm-hmm.
You have like a good 5 minutes, possibly longer depending on your group, to figure it out. Use that time to figure it out. Don't wait till your turn to start looking and go, now let's see, how far away am I? Okay, so I could do, use your 5 minutes that you had ahead of time to figure it out. Have a backup plan for when that shit can't happen.
I was about to say, granted, there's no guarantee that you'll be able to do what you want to do based on what everybody else does, but always have a backup, like you said.
Yeah, like, I'm going to cast Fireball. Oh, shit, the freaking Barbarian ran in.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. Now, what am I going to do if they don't have Okay, I can't do Fireball. Oh, maybe they could still take it, but no, let's do something else. Like, look and see what your spells are. Look and see what your options are. And try to figure it out before your turn. I personally think maps are important for any type of scenario that might lead to combat.
Of course, yeah. That's the big one. Like at towns and stuff like that, like it'll help a little, but if there's no threat of combat or anything like that, I wouldn't even really say it's necessary to make a map for that kind of a situation.
Yeah, and with the towns, if it's a town they're going to visit quite frequently, then sure, you can make a generic map to show them like the general layout. Like, here's where the general store, here is where this is, here's where that is. But it doesn't need to be like 5-foot steps and it's 50 feet away and all that stuff. Just like a sketch, so to speak. But a map is really, really imperative if you want your party to figure out what they're doing while you're waiting. Other people are taking their turns, because theater of the mind is great, but you're going to constantly be interrupted by players going, how far away am I again?
Yeah, I remember specifically in one of the Curse of Strahd campaigns, the one that I ran, there was one combat scenario that I didn't feel like drawing a map, so I was just like, forget it. Well, I'll just do this all in my head. It'll be fine. And that did happen quite a bit, where people were like, "Where am I? How far away am I? Am I this close? Can I do this?"
Right, exactly.
And half the time, I just kind of went, "Yeah, sure." You know, I don't. The map in my head is just gone at this point because so much stuff has happened. So yes, you're that close because I say so, I guess.
Yeah, and this has happened in play-by-post games too. I actually was getting frustrated because it was all theater of the mind, and the DM was like, "You need to remember how far you are," and I'm like, "There's 7 other things happening. I'm not gonna remember and read through 100 posts to tell me, okay, they moved 30 feet and I didn't move, and then they pushed me back 15 feet. Like, no, like." Can you just make a map?
I barely remember how old I am on a daily basis. Like,
Exactly.
come on.
I'm like, come on, dude, work with me here. But there were so many instances where every single turn I had to go, okay, how far away are they? Are there 2 within 5 feet? Do I have an ally within 5 feet of them? Because I was playing a ranger rogue and I could attack I could attack twice, and then if they were within 5 feet, I could attack a third time. And if I had an ally, I got I got sneak attack. So I'm like, I have to ask those questions every single time. Where if you just showed me a map, I could look at the map and then go, oh, cool, I can just aim for those 2 because I can get 3 hits if I do that. So personally, I think a map is usually needed, especially if combat is involved.
Absolutely. 100% agree with that. And just as an additional thing for the previous one about the stopping downtime and making decisions, in a lot of scenarios, making a decision type thing, whether it's maybe not in combat, obviously, because that's not a group thing usually, because that's one by one, but making a decision like, where are we going to go, something like that. Give your players, I wouldn't say an ultimatum exactly, but just be like, oh, you have this much time, you need to make the decision within this time in real time, because if you don't, then something's going to happen.
We have easily spent 30 minutes asking questions to a stone.
Okay.
And we were trying to like get like, okay, what do we have to do next? And then 30 real life minutes on how to freaking word a question.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm speaking specifically because I remember a bunch of scenarios in Critical Role where they're like, I think most of that was actually in combat. Now that I think about it, but it was like, you have 6 seconds. You need to give me an answer. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah, that's important. If someone's dwindling too long, and I think it's more imperative when it's a live show.
I mean, sure,
because
absolutely.
it's like we're on a time crunch. You're not going to have 15 minutes to figure it out. You have 6 seconds. Go. Like, what are you doing? In a real, like, if you're not in combat, you could take a little bit of time, but if it just becomes obnoxious and people are just being wishy-washy and not doing anything, it's like, come on, what are you doing? Make up your minds.
At that point, I would usually, regardless of where we are, I would just kind of like pick up a little hourglass, just flip it and just let it go. And then once it hits nothing, throw an encounter at them. Doesn't matter if they're in their inn, just have something happen to interrupt the decision-making process. So that way it kind of leans them toward making the decision that way.
Stones fall and then you die.
Exactly. Something. So, you suddenly hear something at the window of your inn. Somebody goes look at it. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of, there was a situation recently where we couldn't decide what we needed to do, and instead it was more like, okay, we have like 4 things we could do. What's the most imperative? And we had to like go down the list a little bit and determine how long each thing would take and when certain things had timelines. So we had to meet somebody, and this was my Friday game. We had to meet somebody, but they were only going to be available on Friday night. So that was tomorrow night. So we knew tomorrow night we have something to do. So one of the other things we wanted to do was go visit my character's family, but that's a 2-week travel. So obviously we can't do that right now. So that eliminates that option. So now there's 2 options we can do. So that's one way to do it, is like, think of somebody needs to keep track. Like, somebody in your party needs to help keep track of all these side quests, quote unquote, that you have. I think with that also is the stopping downtime is have at least one person in your group taking notes and helping a little bit, whether or not it's helping the DM or helping the party. That's up to everybody else. But like if nobody's taking notes, then nobody's going to remember what's happening.
Unless a random fluke happens, like with Crom in our last
That will
game.
never happen again.
Nope, never again.
So Crom's player has a very bad memory and has a tendency to not know what's going on sometimes. And for some reason, we could not remember the situation that started everything. And he remembered it without reading any notes. And we're just like, that's never happening again. Do it again.
Yeah. If only. That was incredible. Everybody was like, "Holy shit!" Like, wow, good job. Wow, man. Wow, I'm impressed. Like, even Ashley was like, "I'm very impressed with you right now." Like, that was intense.
Like my issue is I have like 30 pages of notes. I don't know where in those notes that information is.
Right. I always, speaking of that, always make sure you have a entire room dedicated to notebooks when you're playing D&D. By the way, everybody,
Never find any
you
of them.
always need. Yeah, well, that too, but you always need a notebook for every game you're playing because taking notes is very important.
That's one thing I want to try to do when we do the actual play is like everybody have a notebook. Everybody take their own notes.
Absolutely. I'm probably going to go out and purchase like one of those big, like 300-page 3-ring binders, and I'm just going to have that for that because that way you can take pages out if you mess up or what have you.
Yeah. Now the last question is useful tools for on-the-fly changes in improv. Now, other than just learning,
Improving, like
an actual improv, some tools could be, like I mentioned earlier, building a table of pre-existing campaigns or building a list of pre-existing potential quest lines if you just need something on the fly. There are websites like Don John that can help with building random encounters, random magic list, dungeons, magic shops, etc. There's websites like Random Name Generator that can help you find a name. There's websites that I don't know off the top of my head, but that can help you create an NPC on the fly. I used certain sites to just completely generate random stores and what was in the store currently being sold. Like, there's a generator for pretty much everything.
Yeah, literally, you literally just have to go on Google and type in X generator and something. You'll find just a plethora of websites that you can access and use. What do you remember the name? Was it Roll Character? Roll the one that when you had your birthday D&D game, like I just went on there and I hit level 20. This is the class I want. Go, and it created the character for me. Is that Roll Character? Oh man. Hold on.
Well, there's a ton of them. If you just type in random character creator, there's a bunch that comes up. There's fastcharacter.com, which I think is the one we used.
That's the one I was thinking of. Thank you.
Yeah, and on Fast Character, you can literally type in your race, gender, class, and level. You can even put background and alignment, and it will randomly generate a character for you. Now, the one thing I will say is it's not great all the time.
No, it is not.
You'll have a character. It will not necessarily be properly balanced to do the things you want it to do.
Nope. That's where my, I think it was my illusion dwarven wizard came from.
Yes.
And that we played that. I mean, we didn't play that campaign for very long, but man, I could just not do anything. Like I had one damaging spell, and that was it.
I've actually found, I can't really share it because it's a doc, but I found a document that's literally a 5e random race table, and you roll a d20 and it tells you to a race, like you roll a 5, you get Dragonborn, and then you scroll down and you go to the Dragonborn table and you roll again to determine what type of Dragonborn. And then there's something called RANGen, RANGEN.co.uk. And they have a personality generator on there where you can just type in, I want a simple one character, and I get quick thinking and thoughtful. If I want detailed, I get they are gentle, they're honorable, they're touchy-feely, but they're a little conceited. And you like get a little bit more details on them. And it says current emotional state cranky. So you can like literally just generate an NPC personality right now and go, let's see, what is the shopkeep like? Oh, okay. They're cranky right now.
Nice.
But with that in mind, if you're going to do that, keep track of what you find so you make sure that they fit later.
Yeah, go back to taking notes again, guys. Always keep notes. Because your characters, I mean, at least I know I would point out, like, oh, that's not the voice you used for that character last time we ran into him, or didn't this happen last time with you, or something like that. You know, just always good to keep like not a massive amount of notes per like random NPC, but just little things. So that way you can always refer back to it when needed.
Yeah, and for the DM, it would more be a this is the person's name, this is the store they're running, this is their personality, and then maybe like a note like X tried to steal from them and they got caught and the guards were called, so that if you run into them again, they're going to be like, you still owe me 20 gold or whatever the case may be. I know that in one game that I'm not in anymore, a player stole from someone who swindled him. It was a halfling who swindled him and gave him fake potions. They were just watered down, colored water. They're just colored water. And he bought them for like 15 gold each or something. And I wasn't in the party at the time when it happened, but I was like, why would you not think that was a bad idea when they usually go for 50 gold? And like, nobody would sell potions for less than half their cost. You would know in character how much a potion goes for. You're level 9. You would know that. And he bought like 5 or 6 potions from this guy and got swindled out of his gold. So when we ran into him again, the guy got intimidated, and he's like, sure, here, take your money, let me go get it for you. And he went in the back and got the money and gave it to him, and he sleight of handed like he was grabbing it out of one pouch, but he grabbed it out of a different pouch, and nobody checked the coins.
Nice.
And then the person went to go try to sneak back there and try to steal from the pouch he saw him go into with his poor perception check, and almost lost his arm because it was a bag of devouring.
Oh, good. My favorite enemy.
So then he gets away, and then we go to a magic shop.
Right next to the rug of smothering, my favorite
those
thing.
are both fun. He gets away, we go to the next shop, he buys a magic item after I caught him stealing and told him no. But I only caught him steal one of the 2 things he stole. And he buys something with the money that he was just given. And then next thing we know, 2 guards are coming for us because we gave them fake money.
Very nice.
So make those notes because it's going to come and bite them in the ass later.
For sure.
But on that note, unless there's anything else you'd like to add about DMing.
Oh, I did just remember one of the favorite things that I improved, going back to, I think, one of the first, the very first things of the episode. During that first Curse of Strahd campaign that I ran, one of the characters kind of had a thing where they would just kind of go off doing their own thing, which we've talked about a few different times. But they basically died 2 or 3 different times throughout that campaign. And every time, I had to try to figure something out on how either A, they were saved, or B, just how, not saved by an NPC or another player per se, but just how they managed to get out of the situation. And I kind of drew inspiration from Critical Role, where basically she died and I had the Raven Queen basically save her soul and make her her, what's the word I'm looking for? Not like a champion, but her
Patron.
Patron. Thank you. And one of the other people who also happened to follow the Raven Queen in the town was told by the Raven Queen, "Hey, this is where she is. She needs help. Go get her." And came and saved her and did all of that. So I kind of, like I said, I drew inspiration from Critical Role from that, but I felt like that was probably one of my better little things that I did just on the fly, trying to save a character from dying for the third time.
My favorite improv for me that I can think of off the top of my head right now is one of the most recent ones I did. The player wanted to retire their character because their character wasn't doing great. They weren't hitting things. They were dying very easily. They weren't as tanky as they wanted. And it was just week after week of frustration. So I'm like, I am the choice. I'm like, you can retire them, but they will more than likely retire by dying. And you can bring in a new character if you want. And so we did. And I improv'd the entire battle that happened. Her character was a paladin of Helm, and I had a or a ship come by with Helm's flag on it. And the people on the ship were all followers of Helm. And the option was they could leave and just go, but they happen to be currently working for a pirate. And the pirate is like, go ahead, sneak on, told 4 of her people to go sneak on the ship and go steal their stuff. And then they got caught. So I improv the entire battle, like on the spot. I pulled in a bunch of bad guys and did all that stuff and improved how the character would get involved. And I messaged her ahead of time, like literally within seconds ahead before the battle started. And I go, how loyal is your new character? If she's been working for the Helm people, will she continue to work for them? Or if she offered more money, she'll switch sides? Because I'm trying to get this new character into the party. And she's like, she'll switch sides. And I'm like, okay. So the pirate looks at her and goes, I'll give you double whatever they're paying you.
Nice.
And she's like, okay. And she's like, what are they paying you? And she's like, 35 gold. She's like, I'll give you 80 if you just turn sides right now and kill the captain. And she shrugs and turns sides. But the entire time, her old character, who is a lawful good paladin of Helm, is so against this. So he is like, what are you guys doing? And trying to like fight this other new character and fight the bad guys that are like the pirates who are actually trying to kill each other. But he ends up getting killed. Somebody hit him twice and he went down on the first hit. So the second hit was an automatic 2 death save.
Oof.
And then I had the pirate captain go up and stab him to just like finish him off because he wasn't listening to her. But I rolled a sleight of hand check and nobody noticed it, that she did it. But later the cleric was able to determine that because it was like a flaming rapier, basically, it was pretty obvious what killed him. He was able to determine like the captain was the one who did the final blow and she shouldn't be trusted. So it opened up like a new realm of difficulties and possibilities. Like they technically need to obey because they're on this ship and they're in the middle of the ocean, but they've also just lost a friend. So
very nice.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, sounds like it. And I mean, that just goes to show just how much more experienced you are than me at stuff like that.
But on that note, that is the end of the episode. You guys can check us out on Facebook and Twitter at Beholder to No One. And you can listen to the podcast wherever podcasts are being listened to, which is pretty much everywhere. And like Greg mentioned earlier, we are in the process of building a actual play game. We aren't sure the exact date yet, and I don't want to release any details about it, but our friend Ryan will be DMing. Greg, myself, and my husband, and possibly Ashley will be playing. But we're all really excited to dive into this and record, but just bear with us as we are learning the ropes and getting the equipment and figuring this out.
Yeah, lots of little things that need to be hammered out before we actually start working on it. So give us time. It will happen. Just give us time.
We know what we need. We just need to set it up. And obviously with COVID, things are a little bit more difficult.
For sure.
But it will happen and everything will be amazing. Hopefully.
Yep, absolutely.
Also, I will not be doing a voice because I suck at voices.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out mine, but I'll be doing something.
I suck at voices unless it's a British accent, and even that I'm pretty sure everybody's gonna be like, that's not a British accent.
Right, of course.
But anyway, so thank you for joining us and thank you for listening. Please reach out and chat with me over on Twitter specifically, because that's where I'm being most active lately.
Yep. You can always chat with me on Facebook if you'd like. My phone is pretty lonely most of the time, so I always have free time.
And we will talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.